Good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here today. On behalf of the International Center for Ethics, Justice and Public Life at Brandeis University, I wish you a warm welcome. I want to thank the wonderful team of the Ethics Center who has put together a wonderful series of events. I know that many of you have been there during the whole week. We didn't have enough paper, actually. I mean, fortunately, there is legal paper, right? There would be no way to put more events on this piece of paper. But I want to thank particularly Dan Terris, who couldn't be with us today, Marcy, who has been also wonderful at organizing all of this. I know Barbara is there outside. Anne Goudaitis has been wonderful with us, and also Germain Indiasa. They were all part of this preparation team. It's a great honor and it's a great pleasure for me to introduce Michel Noureddine Kassa. He's our 6th distinguished visiting practitioner. And I think that he's probably the best illustration of what the program of distinguished visiting practitioners is trying to do, is to invite real-world leading practitioners to campus. He is someone, and you will discover that if you have not had the privilege to hear him so far, you will see that the extent of his understanding of so many of these problems of coexistence. As the head of the coexistence graduate programs at the head of schools for social policy and management at Brandeis University, I see Michel as one of the leading practitioners of coexistence. He's a friend, but sometimes I see him as one of these thousands of wonderful people around the world who deserve the Nobel Peace Prize for their work every day. You know, Michel started his career as an officer for Action Against Hunger in Pakistan, and then worked for Doctors Without Borders, MSF. In Malawi, he was the head of MSF in South Africa, then worked as the head of mission in Haiti. So has an incredible understanding of what it takes to run complex programs in humanitarian crisis. But then he joined in 1995 the United Nations Development Program, UNDP. He became head of OCHA. For those of you who know OCHA, it's the Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, and he became the head of OCHA in the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC. He was there between 1995 and 2003. So as you can tell, at the worst of the episodes of the wars in 1996 and 1998 in the DRC. And yes, I was very privileged to meet him in 2005. There is one person that I need to also talk about here for a minute, and it's Howard Wolpe. Howard Wolpe was President Clinton's former special envoy to the Great Lakes region, and he was then President Obama's special advisor to the Great Lakes region. And Howard was a diplomat who understood that it is not enough for leaders to shake hands and reach agreement, that it was very often at that time that everything had to start to make the peace happen, beyond the peace agreement. And I was very pleased and honored to work with Howard in Burundi for 5 years before I started working in the DRC with Michel, because Howard knew that the same way you had to rebuild cohesion of the leadership in Burundi after also the terrible episodes of Hutus and Tutsis' lack of coexistence, that the same way a country like Congo needed a strong program to rebuild or build national cohesion for Congo. And that's where everyone that Howard was meeting in Congo, everyone was saying, well, you know, if there is one person who, through the episodes of war, has remained helpful to all the parties, all the stakeholders, who has been seen as fair by everyone. It's Michel Kassa, our guest of today. It was wonderful to work with Michel through these tens of workshops that he put together, through this initiative for cohesive leadership that he has been running since 2006. So you see, Michel worked for NGOs, international NGOs, Action Against Hunger, Doctors Without Borders, then he joined the UN, and it takes a lot of also humility, he went back to creating a local NGO, a Congolese NGO, which is the Initiative for a Cohesive Leadership. Before I let also Marcy say a few more words, I want to give you two images of Michel, because it also describes the way he is with everyone, whether it's a head of state or anyone that I've seen him meet in Congo. He's someone who knows how to keep his chin up. You know, I mean, he knows wherever it's necessary, whether it's a head of state, a minister, a bishop, general, it's someone who could face a conversation, a difficult conversation, with some of these leaders, with determination and humility. But he's also someone, and I've often said that to him, who can sometimes keep his chin down. In French we say, avoir le menton engoncé. You know, when Michel, when Michel has his chin up, he's listening, he's reflecting, he's really helping the conversation. But if he has his chin up, he jumps down, right? It means, guys, I'm not buying what you're saying. I think you could do better than that. You know, I think you are accountable towards the people that you are in group. So I think that between chins up and chin down, I know that Michel has been extraordinary at bringing these leaders together and bringing sometimes them back to a heightened sense of responsibility. Marcy, I think that I know you wanted to say a few more words, and again, before giving the opportunity for Michel to tell us about his speech today, I'll let you speak a few more words.
I'm Marcy McPhee, Associate Director of the International Center for Ethics, Justice, and Public Life here at Brandeis University, and it's my honor to just say a few words of welcome on behalf of the Center and the University to Michel. One of the overarching principles of the work of the Ethics Center is the bridge between scholarship and practice. It undergirds everything that we do. It undergirds our work with the international judges, where we convene the only regular gathering in the world of those judges who sit on transnational courts, bringing academics and their experience on the bench together. It undergirds the work that my colleague Cindy Cohen does with peace building in the arts, where she's produced an award-winning video documentary and toolkit that's being translated into 6 languages about the intersection of peace building and the arts. And nowhere is it more evident than on campus when we bring these distinguished visiting practitioners to campus. As Alain mentioned, this is our 6th distinguished visiting practitioner, and the way that it works is that faculty members will propose someone that they would like to bring to campus, and we work with that faculty member as the host for the week-long residency. And it serves to bridge scholarship and practice as students are learning in the classroom, but they're also hearing from someone, as Alain was saying, that has this lived experience that can inform their thinking. So it's been our honor to work with Alain as the faculty host, as the director of the graduate programs in coexistence and conflict at the Heller School. He's an esteemed colleague, and we remember fondly in the Ethics Center being actually the incubator for this program. And we have a history of taking good ideas, bringing them to the sprout stage, and transplanting them to places where they might continue to flourish and grow, and that's the situation with this COEX program, and we're pleased to continue our work with Alain and his fine leadership of this program. So during this week-long residency, we suspect it's probably about the longest week of their lives. We worked them pretty hard with class visits and with club visits, meeting with student clubs to think about the relationship of their work to the interests of the clubs. He gave a wonderful career talk today at noontime, office hours with individual students, with this keynote as the centerpiece of the week. We've seen him chin up and chin down with the undergraduates and the graduate students and the Brandeis community with his good, wise words in student group and class talks and panel discussions, and we're looking forward to his talk tonight. It's my pleasure to welcome Michel on behalf of the Center.
I feel deeply humbled by the exceptional privilege I have been given by the group of very committed and risk-taking persons that I've met since Monday, since I arrived this Monday, and who hosted me here at Brandeis. I only said good words just before this, so for those who didn't hear. And Marcy, Daniel, Alain, of course, Barbara, Anne, but also I should not forget the warm welcome and nice escort and efficient escort I got also from Germain, Daniel, Sarah, Beneva, and Maura, and the nice discussions I had with them. I have realized that I was much more comfortable with a bit of text in front of me, because I cannot overstate how important it is to feel that we are trying to achieve on the ground, what we're trying to achieve on the ground on the other side of the planet is understood and can yield so much empathy. And as I often felt it, also even envy amongst the students, freshmen, senior, junior. Likewise, it was a bit of an adventure to enter classrooms, sometimes to even intrude into some classrooms, and each one with its style, its approaches to expose and to my way of talking. And clearly I have realized how difficult it is to talk about places such as Central Africa without a certain dose of historical background and historical context. So much so that in my improvised interventions in the past few days, history more often than not took precedence over some thematic discussions. The subject I've chosen to closer. All right, thank you. Sorry. The subject I've chosen to address was initially meant to introduce you to the complex, extraordinarily complex situation and soul-searching challenges of Central Africa, and more particularly of the DRC. But it's clear that by extension, one can see in the tension between those words, national cohesion, insecure states, states of insecurity, we can reverse the words, we can see a reference to, and perhaps 2/3 of the planet. We could define 2/3 of the planet as very insecure states to a certain extent, and 2/3 of the UN member states. And in order to be as free as possible to be judgmental on these 2/3 of the planet, I will start with my own a tale from my own dear countries, France and Algeria, since I'm French and Algerian. I could start with France and 2012, just earlier this year. In March, we had a tragedy that took the whole country into a total anguish and anxiety for a couple of days, in the face of a mix of internal and external threats to what is called in France the République laïque, to the very notion of the French Republic. The same in Algeria. This shook France to a very high degree that we're still trying to analyze. In Algeria, back in 1980, but also in 88, and of course between 1990 and 99, Algeria experienced an early spring. What we call the Arab Spring since 2010 and 11 was kind of experienced in Algeria, probably too early, at a stage when we had a radical state facing a radical Islamic movement, and there was no compromise possible. And the army took side, unlike what happened in Tunisia and in Egypt, especially in 2011. But there again, we had a sad example of insecurity and an insecure state and a problem of cohesion within the society. The issue, as we see it, is that there seems to be a paradox in the national cohesion, in the fact that in a context of insecurity, national cohesion can be seen as the threat by those within the society who have adopted a mindset of zero-game mistrust, when mistrust prevails and when there are clashes of legitimacy. The same, to a certain extent as well, the secondary actors such as conflict resolution specialists that you will all be soon, the donor community, the multilateral organizations, friends of, for example, in DRC we have a club called the Friends of the Country, composed of a couple of UN member states. The same with another category of external actors, neighboring countries or countries of origin of key communities that are living in a specific state. The challenge for these actors is the duty to exert some self-restraint. Typically today, one would talk about, we all hear the news about Congo, the Rwandan state probably has to think on a daily basis whether to exert self-restraint or not in the face of an insecure neighbor. And this has been a question for the past 15 years, or if not more. The structure of my reflection on the paradox of cohesion and insecurity, I will try to structure it into two parts. But before, I will ask you, I will show you this picture, and I think, to me, there's nothing that represents absolute insecurity better than this image. I wanted to ask the audience, but I think it would be a bit too difficult to do so. So that I will just. This is Bunia in 2003 in Ituri, and I think it goes without explanation the chaotic situation that sometimes we've been facing, and you can still have this type of images in some parts of North Kivu and South Kivu today as we speak. Everything is there, the child soldier and the civilians running away. The structure of my presentation will be as such, in the sense that I will try to decompose or deconstruct the notion, the challenge between national cohesion and insecurity at large into three contexts. One is absolute insecurity, the other one will be social insecurity, and a third one, which is, I think, not enough mentioned, which is that between generations. Then, of course, we will explore ways of addressing the roots of insecurity, including the clashes of legitimacies that are very often behind the causes of that insecurity, and to see how addressing the roots of insecurity can help in the collective effort towards national cohesion. I will, of course, focus on the case of DRC because of that image to a certain extent. And to do so, I will once again fall into the trap of having to present a bit of the historical background. Because it's the pictures you will see say a lot about alienation, mistrust, the history of alienation and mistrust, in 4 stages that I will show, but also self-alienation and instrumented mistrust by national actors. You have a first period of personalities whom have named markers of Congo history. So you have, of course, Leopold, you have the explorer who helped him, and Stanley, and on the right, a lesser-known figure, Tipotip, the headmaster of the slave trade on the eastern part of Africa, from Zanzibar and Tanzania, as far west as in the middle of DRC, of Congo. Places like Kindu and Kasongo still have memories of that. You have Lumumba, flanked by the Cold War major actors of that period. Second stage of the markers of Congo, central figure of Mobutu, and maybe less known figures, less known marks of influence, that of North Korea and China, which inspired a lot Mobutu Sese Seko in the early 70s, when he decided to bet on an extremely authoritarian and security-centered type of regime. He drew a lot of lessons during his from his trips to North Korea and China. And apart from maybe the central figure there, which is the picture of the CIA head of station in the 60s in Congo, these are probably the galaxy of influence that was surrounding the Zairian regime at that time. Third, markers of Congo's history. I decided to put in the center the picture of the event of the past 50 years, I would say, almost in Africa, which is the crossing of the border. First of all, what happened before was the 100 days of genocide in Rwanda, and that's the crossing of the border between Rwanda and Congo and Zaire then, of hundreds of thousands of refugees surrounded by the former army and the militia of Interahamwe. And there you can see symbolically the arrival of the crisis into Zaire, with key actors of that period, Habyarimana, Mitterrand, who was a strong supporter of Habyarimana, but also Laurent Désiré. And I have put, apart from the heads of state who have been extremely influential, who have saved the regime in many occasions, especially Dos Santos of Angola, and I put the figure of Victor Bout as to epitomize, I can say, to symbolize the importance of armed trade and the factor of the existence of arms sellers using the loopholes in the global system to disseminate arms and the capacity to kill throughout the continent, and not only the African continent, as we know Victor Bout's history. Then The last one is a bit less, more sketchy, less. I've put some question marks because I still don't know exactly where it leads us to. But we have the central figure of Joseph Kabila with the man who probably has protected him most. When we talk about interference in Congo's history, nobody incarnates that more, I would say, than Dos Santos of Angola, who helped the regime in many occasions. We have also, of course, President Kagame of Rwanda and Museveni, where there's that complex and difficult history, relationship between the three countries. The Chinese contract of 2007 changed the course of things to a large extent in the new, since the beginning of the third constitution of the Third Republic of DRC since 2006. And I've put also Gertler, who is a tycoon, a business tycoon, whose close friendship with Joseph Kabila has enabled him to get some deals that probably didn't meet the country's interests, but were extremely decisive to a certain extent at some stage. So now, having shown all these figures that shaped to a certain extent Congo's history, I have a quiz which is what's the worst case scenario when there is so much mistrust? And I will just throw it to the audience. When there is mistrust, what is the worst case? Since it's a too big room, I will just, well, it's justified. And to a large extent, any Congolese intellectual or actor can remind us of the fact that it's a history of influence, it's a history of extortion, and to a large extent it's justified. But I would say we need to note that it's much less justified since the end of the Cold War, since the end of the period when Zaire couldn't breathe in terms of foreign policy because of the Cold War. What makes the Congo case unique in this category of absolute insecurity that I've suggested? I think it's in the way we see how the power is managed, the form of management of power. And here we have a unique blend. We have an absolute fragile state, which we can describe by the fact that it's the number 187 out of 187 states surveyed by the UNDP Human Development Index. There are 4 major foreign armed groups in Congo from 3 different countries, Rwanda, LRA Nalu, Uganda, FNL, Burundi. Soldiers and justice personnel are in a structural state of indignity, and because they are in the state of indignity, they behave accordingly, according to their status. There are about 30 militia, including the M23, expressing grievances, and while also they defy Kinshasa on a daily basis. There are patterns of terror on citizens by security services, and there's a supply chain for mineral which is extremely exposed to extortion, opaque deals, and the betrayal of national interest by national actors for petty gains. On the other side, facing that those patterns of absolute fragileness, you have a rather relative self-assurance on the part of the top leadership. There is a feeling that our country is too big to really fail, to really fall and fail, in the sense that years of containment during the Cold War gave a false sense of security to the national leadership, not to the people who really still think today that they are on the verge of being balkanized by foreign conspiracies and the rest of the world. But the top leaders who hold the reality of the power, they don't have that fear, most of them. They know that there's a security net that will be there. And the security net, for example, since 1999, is a massive UN peace observing and then peacekeeping force, over 7 security partnerships, military partnerships with major world and African countries, from Angola to China to USA and Europe. USEC, European Security Program, is an enormous one. And the sovereign and the country has taken, the top leadership has taken the sovereign decision to have these partnerships on a bilateral form rather than making it transparent and multilateral. So it's a sovereign choice by the top leadership. The same could be said about opaque mining deals, military alliances, while and at the same time, the UN or IMF loyalty is requested by the top leadership. So that's, I think, part of the equation. The feeling is that insecurity starts actually in the minds. A background of repression and extortion has distorted to a certain extent the perception of what is owed and what is due. For decades of legacy have led to that lack of perception of what is exactly that I owe as a rich Congolese, for example, and what is owed me from the Belgians, from the rest of the world, from my neighbors. For example, who is responsible for security? I mean, this is the first question any state should ask itself. It's our responsibility, our national responsibility. But it seems to have been forgotten for 30 years in Zaire, especially in Zaire under Mobutu, and ever since, because it was too difficult to address that problem of national security. So insecurity starts in the mind when you don't feel secure, when you don't feel that you have an army and efficient security services. And as a result, as a consequence, the public opinion is easily manipulated by nationalistic slogans, conspiracy theories, which themselves come from insecure minds, as is always the case when it comes to conspiracy theories. From top to the bottom, everyone uses historical claims as a legitimate tool, and some in good faith, some at the expenses of the country's interest. As a result, we have a rather perverse perception that anyway our leaders will never resist the temptations of betraying national interests and national ideals. The important lessons from Congo is that since 1990, many occasions have been lost by the national leadership to take the driver's seat. Instead, we've seen rivalries, divisions, and a reluctance to take responsibility. Although there are exceptions, and I should mention that we can see the rise of a middle class, urban class, which start asking accountability, if I say, try to make the regime accountable for basic services. I move now to states of social insecurity. Just one quiz, once again, it's a bit difficult in a big room like this, but what do you find striking in this picture? I mean, I've never been there, but as you can see, there are swimming pools at every floor, and probably there on the other side there, they probably hear the sound of the tennis ball when there are players there. I put that picture just to, and there we jump out of DRC, this is not DRC, But to the other two-thirds of the world that I was mentioning before. South Africa, in August 2012, just a few months ago, took us by surprise with that strike, that violent strike and violent repression at Marikana mine. It was just a kind of a reminder that nothing had really started in South Africa besides the miracle of 1994. What brings together examples such as South Africa, but also so many other places that you can think of, is to me, it seems that the sense of decency has been lost along the way by the leadership or the elite about the possibility of such coexistence to be sustainable. That's an occasion for me to make a comment on the fact that probably the HDI, the Human Development Indexes, might gain in adding a criterion on the disparities of income, and not only judging the society per se and the usual parameters. We have in DRC, coming back to DRC, one can ask that question, which is why don't the rich Congolese pay taxes? For a very simple reason. First of all, because the state doesn't inspire trust. That's of course a very good excuse and also a pretext. It's also because if you're rich and you can pay your entourage or your family or your community, they will never forget that it's you who paid. It's personalized. The service will be personalized and attached to your image, to your face, unlike a state that is totally anonymous. And also it will be able to show so that you are generous, while if you pay the taxes, nobody will know it. There is a project in Kinshasa which is called Cité du Fleuve, the river town or river city, which aims at becoming a small Dubai on the margins of Kinshasa, on the river, which to many Congolese looks like a recipe for revolt, more revolt and more frustration in a place that is one of the biggest towns in Africa, almost 10 million people. And there will be a 4G internet service and probably everything that one can think of for approximately 20,000 people. Next, and Kinshasa will remain what we know it is, despite the recent summit, meaning a place without sanitation and with very little power supply still today. In the Kivu, there is the first picture you saw was the Masisi Mountains. There, the land is gold. Not so much because there would be minerals underground. There are not so much minerals under the ground in Masisi, but it's a perfect agricultural and livestock land. So the battle over land there is a battle between big actors of all communities using, manipulating community fears to make sure that they can acquire more land for their own businesses. So it's to a certain extent the level of violence that you hear of has a lot to do with social insecurity and the game played by key actors who hide themselves behind community-related tensions. I move quickly to the other category of insecurity, which is one of between generations. You probably are familiar with this image, and of course it gets us back to December 2010 and the death of Bouazizi in Tunisia, which sparked the Arab Spring and the Mediterranean Spring. We can see it as, to a certain extent, as a combination of Arab Spring and the work of Facebook, I would say your own generation, the majority of the people attending this meeting, saying down with paternalism from inside or from outside our country, down with the papa or daddy's system or regime. Then in a second stage, a few months later, what you see, the flip side of it is the electoral outcome, the result of the elections, as if another part of the population, which had not expressed itself during the spring, would say, where are they taking us to? We don't understand. We don't understand them anymore. We thank them for having topped up expelled the former regime, but we don't know where they would like to lead us. So there is that sense in many parts of the world of not understanding these new genius with their Facebook and their way of thinking, their global approach to life, the fact that they could bring a fiancé from the rest of the world or from the other side of the planet. There's a sense of insecurity on the part of the parents, if I can say. Yet what remains from the Arab Spring is a sense here that national dignity was the result of that uprising. I now move to trying to address the roots of insecurity, it's as a way of introducing our approach. I would say that every time since May I've decided that every workshop I would start in Congo would start with this small sentence, because there are a lot of traffic jams in Kinshasa. So we are not in the traffic jam, we are the traffic jam. So it helps us concentrate on us and our own responsibilities in so many facets of the issues we have to deal with. And we are part of the problems and the solutions. Which leads me to what are the steps forward when we see these stages of intergenerational, social, and absolute insecurity as we've seen. It's all about national, in my view, it's all about national, local leadership, the elites. No more hiding behind external actors or external culprits, and probably it's more visible today than it was before the Arab Spring, perhaps, but it's more than ever a reality that it's all about national ownership and responsibility. It's also about allowing every stakeholder, including those who have no voice, the pygmy in Congo, the women, the young actors, to express their respective grievances, their fears, their suspicions. It's also about pressing the reset button about the sources and authors of exploitation and alienation. It's a bit as if the population should start to say, let's watch, check, and sometimes sanction our leaders first and foremost before trying to read in the rest of the world the origins of my problems. In a sense, it's a form of a new national liberation when we watch our own leadership. Who and how? And then we get to the variety of actors that could play that part of the story. Local actors, NGOs, credible personalities. That's the better deal. I would say that this would be the better choice, but sometimes it's at high risks, risk of insecurity or suspicions from other segments of the society, and of defamation if by other segments of the society, or out of rivalry. A good option would be is usually a mix of external actors and national, that I call patriots, who try to stand above their particular interests, try to move away from even what their parents told them about communities and the relationship between communities. And the approach, and how what we've seen is that the best approach, and thanks to Howard Volpe that I will mention after, an etiquette-free conversation. No more protocol, no more status difference of status between the participants of a given meeting. Trying to bring together the key stakeholders and the influential actors and voices. In Congo, this is what we've tried to do through the Initiative for Cohesive Leadership. That's now 6-year-old now. We try to engage the key actors of Congo through a 3-step process. The first step is to identify key actors. For that, we try to ask knowledgeable people, university experts, journalists, to give us a list of 30-35 key actors as they see them in any given setting, in Eastern Congo, on the military, in the military sector, or in the business sector. Think about the 35 people who, in your mind, are the best or the worst actors, the spoilers or the angels. We try to invite them. We write them invitation letters. We try to be as short as we can. We used to have 5 days workshop. It would never work, because the higher you seek, the higher you invite, the less time that person has. To be fair with those person, I have to acknowledge that. But we send them the invitation, and then we engage them through the workshops that I'm going to present. Of course, the most difficult step is the second one. You never know who will respond to your invitation. You call. You in the letter or in the call or in the interview, you try to appeal to appeal for their patriotism, because it might sound ridiculous, not so much in USA, but in places like France, to talk about patriotism is a bit, sometimes sounds weird. In Congo, I think it should not. There's a need for a new form of patriotism. It's sometimes extremely difficult to get to have the key people, especially the ministers and the presidential advisors, around the table in the room. We usually engage them by either reminding them or informing them that there are usually 5 obstacles in any attempt to address a conflict. One is the zero-sum game mindset that I mentioned before, which you all know. I win and you lose. There's no other way. The zero trust among leaders. This is a reality when we talk about, for example, the relationship between Presidents Kabila and Kagame in the past 10 years. It has been a very cyclical one of trust and mistrust over years of relations, of tough relations. Zero consensus on the rules of the game. It's particularly true in an electoral context. For example, last year the constitution was changed before the election. The election happened to be chaotic and not credible, and we are still paying today the price of those chaotic elections. Zero limit in public hate speech. I think it goes without explanation. And maybe I should say still that in July this year, in a move of anger against whoever was looking Rwandophone or Rwandan in Goma, there was an eruption of violence at the initiative of the taxi drivers, the motorbike taxis. And immediately an instruction came from Kinshasa to stop any march and to forbid the taxi drivers from moving throughout the town, which is new compared to previous context of crisis in which there was no such instructions from the central government. So there's a real progress on that matter. The last obstacle is one of conflicting legitimacies. How is it possible to talk between ourselves when, if I consider you an alien and you consider yourself as a Congolese? So the notions of identity, the notion of, for example, there is still someone today who calls himself, Tshisekedi, who calls himself the DRC president. Of course, there's a clash of legitimacy between him and those who support the Kabila. The tools we use, we make extensive use of simulations and role plays. A lot of laughter, a lot of cinema and theater, and nobody plays that better than Alain. You will know it probably sooner or later in your encounters with him. We use such exercises as the oil pricing, which was invented here in this town, the simulated society, and something that we've called the Republic of Top Mid-Tom. Of course, it's not the real name in French, it's Somiba, meaning the top leadership, the medium, and the bottom. And we try to, of course, all these exercises are meant to bring key leaders in situations of constraint and extreme frustration. For example, they are brought in regions or sectors where there's absolutely no resource and they have to fend for themselves and to find a way of being cohesive. So these we would never have achieved what we have achieved in the past 6 years without that approach of contextualization. Contextualization without using the taboo words like Kivu, Tutsi, Hutu, rich and poor Congolese. We just it's extremely precious to use fictitious names and situations. Just like for a heart, we decided that the three most important pillars to reach some level of minimal cohesion in a place like Congo has to revolve around the questions of security, first of all, of course, of coexistence, and of economic development, how to make it possible for anyone to invest in Congo, starting with the Congolese actors themselves, or the diaspora. Some of our, I will just now end the presentation, don't be too worried, there are only a few slides now, to show some of the attempts we went through all these years. What you see here is not a normal picture. It brought together enemies. The fact is that they are all Congolese, but they were divided between those representing the national army, the Mai Mai groups, the militiamen pretending to protect their respective communities, and the CNDP also pretending to protect essentially the Rwandophone communities, the Tutsi and the Hutu. As you can guess, it didn't materialize. We don't have a national armies yet, but we still think that the challenge is still there. The central challenge of Congo is to find a way to set up a new army that would accommodate all the communities' fears and be able to address the fears of any part of any segment of the national society, which is not the case and has never been the case so far. Since even the colonial era, it has never been really a priority. In the second picture I would like to show is that we invited Congolese and Rwandan senators and parliamentarians. We invited them in Gisenyi. That was in May 2010. On the extreme left, you have Mr. Ntumba, who was then number 2 of the Great Lakes community structure, which is at the back of the picture. But now he's the executive secretary of the International Conference for the Great Lakes region, based in Bujumbura. He's Congolese. And you know, if there's one achievement with that, is that each side told its story of the Great Lakes crisis, and nobody slammed the door. We were very close to that in many instances, but nobody left the room in 3 days of workshop. And on the contrary, they really expect us to organize the same thing now in Congo. And it might be the case before the end of the year. We will try to have that, because we would like to fight the spirit of fatalism that we can feel spreading in Congo since the eruption of the M23 back in March. Congo is facing an enormous crisis at the moment, and there's no really solution in sight. So we think that maybe trying to foster discussion through such workshops might help. This is just very recent, that was 10 days ago. This man there represents President Kabila, and next to him, Marie-Claire, she's the administrator of the territory of Masisi, and she honestly told the whole audience that she only controlled 25% of her territory. The rest was in the hands of Mai Mai and CNDP and other militia. And they were simulating an audience by a delegation of Congolese personalities, trying to convince the head of state to take some steps to reinforce the national army, but in a cohesive way, which is, of course, the most difficult aspect of the question. I wanted to end with this picture, which, in fact, the only thing it shows is that this whole crowd waiting for the mayor to come and solve their basic problems of documentations, and the problem is that he's not around, he's not there, or he or she's not there. And this is the problem we usually face when trying to invite the top leadership. But we have not surrendered yet. We have not stopped our attempts to have them in our room. I would like to end with this picture, because in the center of the picture there is Howard Wolpe, a former senator, as Alain presented him. who was heading the leadership and Africa programs at the Woodrow Wilson Center. He passed away last year, and he was the engine behind that imaginative use of simulation tools. It seems to me that nobody dared to do that before he decided to try it in Burundi back in 2003. And actually we are still today inspired by him in doing what we're trying to do. And my final point is that the overarching goal to get to national cohesion is for any leadership to be seen and tested and accept to be tested as taking the driver's seat after decades of alienation, especially in a place like Congo, as I mentioned it before. Thank you very much.